The dead have always been present in the Zelda universe, but there's one iconic type that has been around for a really long time. The POE. However, in what ways did they evolve? How did they change in terms of gameplay, use, story, and design? Well, let's find out. They were first seen in A Link to the Past. They appear at the graveyard near the sanctuary in the Light World, flying around the area and circling tombstones. They always tend to appear in large groups. Their behavior is similar to that of genies, which were seen in earlier Zelda games. Just like those beings, they have high health and endurance, and tend to take many hits before they are slain. POEs usually drop items, such as magic jars or arrows when defeated. Now if you look at both this enemy and the genies, then you can clearly see that the POE is an alternate version of the earlier enemy. They are not completely the same, but you can see that they got part of the idea to make this enemy from the genies. They both have similar powers, and they're also seen in the same place, mostly graveyards. By the looks of it, the POE was created to take the genie's place. However, some things changed. For example, they appear in larger groups, and slaying the first one will not destroy all the others on the screen. So they became harder to defeat themed enemies just like the genies, but this time in bigger groups, and you need to kill them all. The genies went through a number of changes and really became their own type of enemy, but that's for another video. Only downside to the POEs in this game is that there isn't a lot of depth, and they're not used a lot. They don't play a big role in the game and are mostly seen at the graveyard near the sanctuary, which is a bit sad. They're really fun, and I would have loved to see them in more areas and even dungeons. But Nintendo didn't give them that much love. However, this would change in the next game. In Ocarina of Time, POEs take on the appearance of a hooded wraith with glowing eyes, and faces shrouded underneath their oversized cloaks. Their distinctive lanterns immediately identifies them, and is the only part of them that will not turn invisible. Targeting a POE will cause it to temporarily become invisible, although they will reappear from time to time. They attack by swinging their lanterns madly at Link, and they mostly appear in Kakariko Graveyard and rise from their disturbed tombstones, much like genies of earlier games. This time around, they aren't fought in groups, and it's more a one-on-one battle where you have to attack it when it's visible. It has a whole strategy all of a sudden, and the biggest difference now is the fact that it's all 3D, which is the reason why everything changed. The new targeting system called Z-targeting is a mode where you focus on a singular enemy, so you can hit them easier and put the camera in the right spot. Thanks to this, group fights have become rare, and since the POEs didn't do any special moves and are found in groups, they had to change them. They gave them actual tactics now, which makes the one-on-one battles a lot better. Besides that, there are also different variants now. The biggest difference is the place where you fight them or their tactic. For example, the big POE can only be fought on horseback with bow and arrow, and the other drops fire as a tactic and has a square-shaped head. They were also incorporated into side quests. For example, you had to kill all 10 big POEs, and as a reward you would get a bottle. Now they also added a reward for killing them, since they will leave POE souls when defeated, which can be collected inside bottles. These souls can then be sold to the POE collector when Link is an adult for a sum of rupees. So fighting them is worth it, since you can get a good price for them. If this wasn't the case, then you would just ignore them almost every time, since it takes quite some effort to defeat them. Besides that, they also added in some special versions that act as important characters, so essentially, they're building a story around them. For example, the individual POE encountered in a haunted wasteland called the Phantom Guide. It is a helpful spirit that guides Link. However, this one is still quite plain, and they don't expand on him really. But the POE sisters who appear as mini-bosses in the Forest Temple are a lot more interesting. These 4 POEs steal the fire in the central room and impede Link's progress, forcing him to hunt down each POE sister. It adds a fun twist, which is also quite fitting for the POEs, since they often disappear. And besides that, they added a mysterious and secretive vibe, since you know nothing about these POE sisters. This is exactly what the POE needed, a bigger role and more use in dungeons, and this time they got both. The Forest Temple has to be one of the best dungeons in the game, and rightfully so, since the concept of a creepy ghost hunt in a maze-like house is really cool. However, there are 2 POEs that are even more important than the sisters, and they are the Composer brothers. They appear in Kakariko Village and are fought as enemies if Link disturbs their tombstones before learning the Sun Song. After they are defeated, they reveal that they were the song's composers and leave it inscribed in the royal family's tombstone. They are really cool standalone characters with their own little dungeon and overall quest. And besides that, there are finally POEs with actual stories attached to them. Ghosts and undead are great for explaining events that happened in the past, since they lived back then. And this is exactly what Nintendo did with these characters. They had quite an in-depth background story and played an important role in the past, so it's cool to see such flashback-like characters in the game. Now after this, things didn't change as much. These enemies were still seen a lot, however not as much as in Ocarina of Time. So from now on we will only look at the completely new stuff they introduced. So first up, a quick look at Majora's Mask. Here the pose had a similar role to the one seen in Ocarina of Time. Even the Composer brothers returned, this time working for the Ikana Kingdom and being named Sharp and Flat. Not a lot of things changed in this game. After this, Nintendo released another 2D game where the poses were seen, however, they were also not seen. In the Oracle series, they do not appear as common enemies, instead having their roles fulfilled by genies. Poses, however, make a less prominent appearance in both games. For example, in Oracle of Ages, a lone one appears inside a fenced tomb in Yule Graveyard. There's a side quest where you help it, and in the end it moves on to the afterlife, and to thank you it gives you a POE clock. Now this game also started an interesting trend, using these enemies as a boss, which is an interesting twist. A pair of POE sisters appear as the mini-bosses of the Explorer's Crypt. One POE sister carries a lantern she uses to throw flames, and the other uses a sword. These POEs curse the room they are encountered in, so that Link is forcefully expelled out of the room if any of the torches go out. In one of the fights you counter this by lighting fires. However, you still need to be fast and watch out. This goes for fighting both of them. It's clearly built around the reaction speed of the player. If you're fast enough you get to hit, but if you're too slow you will be hit. A simple but very fitting mechanic for the pose. Now in the next game, The Wind Waker, there are two big things that changed. Their overall behavior and design. In this game, they yet again have a big role in one of the dungeons named the Earth Temple, which is filled to the brim with undead. This time around, the poses look very, interesting. A bit like Teletubbies for any of you who remember those monsters. They're also a lot more childish and energetic. I'm not sure why they made this drastic change, since they used to be more adult and calm. It could be that they wanted to go with this because of the cartoony look the game has. And I have to say, it's quite fitting for that. Besides that, if Link attacks them enough to make them drop their lanterns, they can also jump into his body, possessing him, and temporarily reversing his movement controls. And to kill them, you need to shine light on them, and over time they will turn into stone. All of this adds to the now goofy character and ways of the enemy. Clearly, they went for the more funny design and attacks. Now this game also features a boss, a grand one both in size and importance, Jolhala. He's composed entirely of POEs and is said to rule over all of them. He splits into many POEs after being thrown into the spiked walls of the boss room. Now you defeat the boss just like you would defeat a normal one, with light. So this is mostly the same fight, but this time on a bigger scale. A cool final challenge to take on their leader. But it's just a bit sad that they didn't really add anything to the fight. It makes it predictable and easy, to be honest. After this, the series went back to a more adult and serious setting and overall design. In Twilight Princess, they take a role similar to that of the Gold Sculpture lads and the POE sisters seen in Ocarina of Time. A man in Castle Town named Giovanni was cursed for his greed and had his soul stolen by POEs, of which there are a total of 60 throughout Hyrule. Their design is more doll-like now, and you can only fight them as a wolf because of the sensibility that is needed to see them. If you collect all their souls, you get infinite rupees, and throughout you also get some other rewards like great fairy tears. Besides that, they're also seen at the Arbiter's Grounds. Here you yet again need to hunt down 4 special POEs, so nothing too special. A lot of this stuff was already seen in Ocarina of Time or any other Zelda game really. To be honest, it's a bit sad that they ended up being used mostly as a collectible and nothing else really. You don't encounter any of the POEs as enemies anymore. They completely lost that role in this game. However, this didn't happen out of nowhere. From Majora's Mask onward, there has been a decline. In the next game, Phantom Hourglass, POEs have a radically different look in comparison to their earlier versions. They appear aboard the ghost ship and attack by teleporting back and forth, periodically spitting a ball of blue fire at Link. So they're ranged enemies now, a bit like the Wizrobes. Those also teleport all over the place and shoot stuff at you. In the game after that, in the Link Between Worlds, POEs are based on those from A Link to the Past. So when it comes to their look and overall behavior, we go back to the basics. But they did add something to it. A group of 9 POEs also appear in the Lost Woods. They help guide Link to the Master Sword, but they also trick you by moving in weird formations and having Link follow the correct POE through the woods. The POEs test him several times doing this, so essentially they turn into a puzzle challenge. In my opinion, it's a fun twist. It certainly adds an aspect to this quite boring area. A final challenge for the most powerful sword in the game. Now let's move on to the very last game they were seen in, Triforce Heroes. Here there was only one fun addition, a boss. The setting is a cool old library. The Grim Reaper will blow out the torches and bring darkness to the room. It will then spin wildly around the room with his scythe. However, with the fire gloves you can relight the torches. It will then float around the room, occasionally charging with its spinning scythe. The Gust Jar can then be used to stun the Grim Reaper, allowing Link to attack its pendant. This fight is pretty epic, to be honest. It has a good setting, it uses old tactics with the disappearing in darkness, and also new things with its scythe attacks. It's a really good combo, and besides that, his design is amazing. He looks like a grand, magical and powerful POE. In my opinion, the best looking boss so far. And that's where it kind of ends. They were made to be tough as nails enemies for scary settings, an evolution of the genies, and at some point they even became quite important for the entire game. However, they ended up being used less and less in the more recent games, and weren't even seen in Breath of the Wild. Let's just hope they will one day return. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to watch more videos, click the annotations on the screen right now, and be sure to click that subscribe button and the little bell so you won't miss any videos. I hope all of you have a lovely, lovely day.